Hello, and welcome to the Say It Out Loud podcast. I am your host, Christine Daynard, and the goal of this podcast is to encourage you to live your best and most authentic life by digging deeper and finding connection through vulnerability. I believe we have been taught that vulnerability is a weakness, when in fact, it is our superpower. In this space, I will share personal stories and conversations with others so you can be empowered by their strength and inspired to take action in your own life. Thank you so much for being here. Now let's get started. Well, welcome back to the Say It Out Loud podcast. Woo, it has been a hot minute since I have been in here. You know what's really interesting is as I was recording the last episode I put out in December, something in me just had me wanting to take a halt and a pause just to, I think, reflect, like, where is this podcast going? Where is this show going? How can I continue to serve the people that are listening? What is feeling aligned for me right now? And how do I want to move forward with this? And you know, it's interesting because, and similar to how I've, mentioned in here before, and we've talked about before, is that at first my mind was like, well, no, Christine, you have to show up in there because you made a promise that you were going to show up in a podcast every week. And just like taking a hiatus and not letting anyone know is like, it's irresponsible. You can't do that. Like playing with all of the old rules, that rule book that no longer exists, the rule book that I know for me, I am trying to unlearn from the old rule book and create my own rule book, which is there are no rules, right? So we find that we commonly find ourselves in having to do things, feeling like we have to do things or should do things a certain way because it's the expectation that happens that way, or it's how things have been done and that's how it should be. And so as I was listening to myself think or feel at first, honestly, it was like there's something in me that just wants to put a stop in this right now. And then going into my mind saying you can't do that because you've made this promise and, you need to keep following through, and coming back to my heart again to say, you know what? I don't have to do anything. This is something that I do I do this because I want to connect with you. I do this because I really want to share parts of my story, and I want to help other people share their story and start saying the things out loud, because most of our healing happens when we feel, and most of that feeling happens when we say it out loud and we get this energy out of our bodies, right? And start talking about the things that we're not normally talking about because they are taboo, or, it's not appropriate to talk about those things. And as the same with the rule book, when it came to, taking what is this now? Like a 6-week hiatus on the podcast, taking that rule book and throwing it out and saying, no, you know what? We can have whatever conversation we want to have. And, I think partly it's age for me, but also partly it's that, once you're moving into, this stage of life, or you've moved through so much personal growth, you realize that, you're not here to please all the people. I've worked really hard to get myself out of the habit of people pleasing all the time. And, that's maybe a topic we're going to come back to a little bit more this year is, some of the things that we find ourselves doing all of the time. And one of those things for me was people pleasing and realizing I was actually a bit of a perfectionist. And so a couple of those, unraveling a couple of those things for myself and unlearning the way that I used to do things has become a really big part of how I want to move forward. And as I am expressing this to you, it's like throwing the rule book out on storytelling, throwing the rule book out on what is appropriate to talk about in a podcast or anywhere for that matter. And, I don't really know what else to say. It's just, I just wanted to throw out the rule book. And I think that that's a practice I'm still working on, right? It's like we talk about this in the Joy Project community all the time. Everything is a practice. And even though I want to talk and say all the things out loud, and even though I have this desire to share stories, not only mine, but others' stories, sometimes our hearts need a break, right? And I think that that's maybe what was happening for me. It was like I was settling into this other little next step of my growth, and I really needed to just honor that I needed to take some time out. I didn't want to have to think of what I was supposed to do. I wanted to feel what the next step was for me. And this is a big piece of what we're doing in the Joy Project community is I am teaching women how to trust themselves again, how to lean back into who they really are and what they really feel and what they really want to do, not just this voice or this message that says this is how it's supposed to be done. And so I am showing up fully in a lot of the lessons that I am teaching to the women because it's twofold. Not only am I teaching that and in a position of leadership and showing these women what's possible when you get outside of the box that we've been put in, but also showing them that I'm a human too. I still make mistakes. Just because I've been doing personal growth, maybe longer, maybe more depth, maybe not than anybody else that I work with, is that I am a human too. And that all of this is practice. You know, sharing our stories takes practice. Showing up fully for ourselves takes practice. Listening to our heart and leaning into what we really want for us takes practice because we have spent most of our lives listening to why we shouldn't listen to ourselves. Like, think about that for a second. We have spent most of our lives trying to think our way through instead of feel our way through. Second guessing most of the decisions that we make because other people in our lives or other things and circumstances are dictating or having an influence on what decisions we're making. And I don't know about you, but I've had enough of all of that. But it takes some unlearning. And I am here to share, more of why we should be doing this. And so I think this year, it's like how I was really leaning into, what my intentions were this year. And as I sit here, I literally am holding my hands over my heart as I say these words, because for me, this podcast is very much a heartfelt space for me. I don't come in here with a script. I, in fact, half the time don't even come in here with a plan of what I'm going to say. I just feel something and I start talking. And I know for some of you that probably sounds like, holy shit, like how do you do that? And honestly, there was a previous version of me that wouldn't have been able to do it either. And the practice of being able to lean into my heart and show up for myself and just listen to what's going to come out of my body, like listen to what feels right for me, not sitting and doing research and deciding how the topic is going to flow into the points that I want to make, because then I feel like I have to fit into some kind of a structure. I have to fit into some sort of expectation, even if it's just one that I'm putting on myself. So instead, I would rather show up here in full vulnerability, fully myself, fully leaning into my heart and sharing the words that are coming out of my mouth. And sometimes, you know what? Sometimes they're going to make sense and sometimes they're not. So if you're here for that, that's awesome, because that's what I'm here for. And so I really, really wanted to, consider like, how do I want to show up this year? And I created a vision board with my Joy Project community members. And we decided on some intentions that we wanted to move through this year in, how we wanted to feel, how we wanted to shift gears on what we were doing, what are some of the actions we want to take so that we can change some of those habits and feel better about what it is and how we're showing up in the world, how we can use our voice more, how we can lean into more of who we are, and how we can honor ourselves better by doing what feels right for us instead of falling back into that trap of like, we're doing it because we feel like we have to do it. And on my vision board, I have 3 pretty big major words on my vision board. One is connection. And as a result of connection, connection means so many things to me. First, I'm just going to review what the 3 words on my vision board are. And then I'm going to describe to you a little bit about what they mean. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about sort of like how I see this podcast moving forward and how it's going to shift gears a little bit. So the one is connection. I already mentioned it. And connection, the second one is love. And the third one is trust, and mostly related to self-trust. So let me go back in an order. Connection. The word connection came through me a lot in 2023, and I really wanted to carry that through in 2024. And I think a big piece of why I wanted to create the Joy Project community was to be somebody who could help to influence women for the positive, to believe in themselves, to trust themselves, to build their confidence, to feel like they have community that are non-judgmental, and other women who are also working on themselves. And, doing the work is not easy, right? And when you're in life and you don't have a lot of people in your direct circle who really support personal development, who really support the fact that you're making changes for the better of you, a lot of the people in our lives don't support that. And so that connection is so incredibly important, that connection with other people who are doing similar things, who are interested in doing similar kinds of work, who want to feel better about what they're doing and putting out in the world and how they show up every day for themselves and others, learning that it's not selfish to take care of you first and being willing to unravel some of that, And so for me, connection came up really strongly, and likely, like I said, as a continuation of what I had created in 2023. And the Joy Project community was a big piece of that. Connection through this podcast, which is like connecting to the hearts of the people who are listening to this podcast, who want to hear or are open to hearing the words that I'm going to share here. And connection to other women and people in person. This has been a big call for me over the last few months. As I was coming up to the end of 2023, I was like, I really feel like there's a big chunk missing out of everything that I'm doing. And what is it? And of course, I think as I got to building the Bloom event with the other ladies that we're hosting in March of 2023 or 2024, March 23rd of 2024, it's coming up soon. And as we're getting closer to launching that event, I think that it's really spurred more of an interest in me for hosting like in-person events, getting people together in person again. And maybe you're sitting in your seat and you're squirming a little at just the thought of that, like we've gotten so used to not seeing each other in person. And the thought of going to like a social event or some kind of event that connects, because my intention is, personal growth and connection, right? Helping bring more women together here in this local area that I live in the Waterloo region, bring more women together so that they can learn together and literally leave these in-person experiences with more courage, more inspiration, more desire to be more of themselves, and having some tools and strategies to be able to do that for themselves. But in addition to that, getting comfortable to like remove the awkward part out of meeting new people and be in a room where there's like intentional connection, where I will introduce different ways for people to connect with other people, and not on the surface level, but on a level that is much deeper than the surface level. Because if you're not already aware of this is what we do is we meet people, or we see people we haven't seen in a long time, and we ask very surface questions. Hey, how are you doing? How's work? How's kids? How's the family? Like, these are all fine things to know, and they're not terrible things to ask. But number one, are we really listening when we ask those questions? The answer is usually no. And do we really care how people are doing? Oftentimes when it's somebody who's not in our life all the time, we're asking the questions just out of like social decency and social grace to be able to ask them these questions. We're not really necessarily fully invested in their answers. And when it comes to intentionally connecting with people, asking questions that are deeper than that surface level. So like literally out of the gates, meeting people and talking about things that we don't normally talk about, making a habit of just what I do here, saying it out loud, talking about the things that mean something. And when we talk about the things that mean something, that connection, it bonds us. It brings us together almost immediately. And we can see each other in that moment. We're bringing in vulnerability and we're seeing each other in that moment, allowing us to build stronger connection. And in a room like what I'm planning to create outside of probably other things that are to come, is to create these moments and these opportunities for true connection, to bring together the women who want to work on themselves, who are either just starting their personal development journey, or they're in the middle of it and they're really having a hard time because, we often, I know I did for a long time, struggled a lot with a lot of the people that I had in my circle. I would, get support from some and then not so much from others. And I really started to evaluate, how do I feel when I'm with these people? And this is a question to ask you too. How do you feel when you leave the people in your life? How do you feel? Do you feel supported? Do you feel heard and seen? Do you feel revived? Do you feel enlightened? Do you feel inspired by them? Do you feel connection? Do you feel like you could go and take on the day? Or do you feel deflated and drained and tapped out and need a nap? And, depending on how you are observing yourself after leaving the people in your life, if you start looking at it through that lens, or start really feeling how you feel when you leave people, you'll really get a better idea how you want to spend time with those people, or if you want to spend time with those people. And so I know I was experiencing a ton of that as I was going through a good chunk of my personal development or my personal growth, and had to make some decisions. As you all heard, I've had several friend breakups. I say that really quickly and easily now, but that certainly has not been easy to do, because it's like you don't leave people behind and not think about them or not still love them, but you know that it's for the better of your personal growth and for your sanity and for your mental wellness, to be around and spend the limited time that we typically have to spend with other people to be the best that it can possibly be. So that connection for me really came strongly through in my vision board intention setting exercise, as well as like, as you're hearing, this intention to go out there and bring women together in the Waterloo region. So PS, if that sounds good to you and you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, that sounds awesome. Like I really want to be a part of that. Please reach out. I'm going to put all the details in the show notes of this podcast, and I will put them in the Instagram reel when I share this, because I'm creating spaces to be able to help us connect better. And for anybody who, remember when I said just a few minutes ago, like if the idea of connecting in person and you're like, oh, I don't know what I think about that. I want to say, like, we have gotten so comfortable not being with people, partially, of course, out of fear for what we have been through in the last several years. But, like I feel like we're in a place where it's like, we're far enough removed now that it's like, okay, let's look at the fact that this happened in our life. Let's evaluate for a second why we still don't want to connect. And I believe, a big piece of me believes, that the reason we don't want to connect is because we're realizing what I just talked about right now for a couple minutes, is we're realizing that the people that we spent time with drained our energy. We're realizing that we weren't getting the support and nurturing from the people that are in our lives. So the more we stay away from them, the better about us we feel. And that's probably true for so many people, but maybe you're just not identifying with it in that way. And now that I've said that out loud, you're probably like, interesting. When I think about it, I do like spending time with the people I really enjoy, but outside of that, I don't want to give up my energy, because you want to reserve your energy for the people you want to really spend time with. And that, my friend, is what it is that I'm trying to create. Not only an online space where we can connect in the Joy Project community, but also as an addition to that, as like an extension of that. You don't have to be a member, but to come to these in-person experiences where we truly connect together, that's where most of that magic is going to happen. It's going to revive your love for people. It's going to revive your courage meter. It's going to give you more confidence, and it's going to put you in a room so you can meet more people that are in vibe and in alignment with that energy. People that lift you instead of people that bring you down, right? If you're anything like me, maybe you are the person in your, friend group or friend groups or family who is the joyful one, who is the one that is always taking care of everybody else, who's always, leaning in and making sure that everybody is taken care of. And oftentimes, maybe not a lot of people are doing that back. Maybe a lot of the people see you as the strong person, see you as the person who does all of this for other people because you care so much, but really no one's really seeing you. No one's really offering you that love back. And we've talked about this in this podcast before, is that a big piece of that is that we also don't let the love back in. So this space and connection is going to allow us to come together, rebuild some of those connections that we've gotten so far away from doing or being or experiencing, and having more meaningful connection with people, right? The second word for me that came up for my vision board was love. And love for me is very multifaceted, I guess you could say. Love is, not necessarily what you might consider like of the romantic kind, because if you've been listening for a while, you probably know that I'm still single and I'm happily single. And when the right person organically falls into my world, then awesome. But outside of that, I'm not chasing it anymore. And because I realized over the last number of years that I wanted more like real love in my life. And what I mean by real love is reciprocal love, is not necessarily in the sense of romantic love, but in the sense of like relationships with friends, with people that I see on the street, with people that are in this community that I'm developing, the people that are like, I can still love other people. I don't have to really like them, but I can show them love and I can show them kindness. And I can know that whatever's coming out of their mouth is probably really not meant for me. It's probably has something to do with something that they've experienced earlier in that day, or something that's really impacting their life and actually has very little to do with, or nothing to do with me. So showing up in love for people, even strangers in my life. And the second part of love that's really big is that, like I was just saying, that reciprocal kind of love, the reciprocal kind that I give love, but I'm also willing to receive it. So currently now my friendships have shifted a lot. In fact, the people in my life have shifted a lot even in the last year. And what those relationships look like has changed a lot. I was often the giver of all of the love and all of the energy to other people, looking out for everybody, but never, ever receiving it back. And I realized something through some of that growth was that I was actually stopping the love from coming back. So I was choosing a lot of relationships where that love couldn't come back because I had put a stop on it. I hadn't allowed myself for people to show up for me because it was a defense mechanism. And that defense mechanism showed up because of a whole bunch of reasons that I'm going to get into this year. We're going to talk about some of my story that, I haven't really talked about loudly before. I haven't really used my voice a ton before about it. And, more and more as I dive into more of me, I realize that these are big pieces of myself that are not only impacting or have not only impacted my life until now, but are the parts of me that I'm unraveling and unlearning because I was led to believe certain things about myself that other people had said about me. And I'm probably not alone in this. I know I'm not alone in this. And so more parts of this story are going to come out, but where was I going with this is that love, that reciprocal love, me allowing to not only love other people, but then allow people to show love to me, whether that's through gifting, whether that's through support, whether that's through showing up physically, whether that's through a phone call, whether that's through coming and making me a meal or, whatever it is. Allowing that love to come back in, that is love. That is reciprocal love. And when we have a stop on our love, when we have, it goes out, but we don't allow it back in, it means there's a trigger there. We have a resistance, we have a wall, and we have to kind of dig underneath that wall and try to figure out or feel through or discover, get curious about why that wall's there in the first place. And that's a big part of what I'm going to talk about this year and uncovering a lot of how I feel or have felt about love and how I feel about it now. So it's like letting love in. And then the final part about love for me is self-love. It is allowing people to love on me as much as I love on them. So allowing that love back in, allowing that flow to come in and out, but also taking better care of me. I had a bit of a health scare at the end of 2023. And you know what, I got to say, if I'm honest, my body was telling me for a long time that I needed to make some changes. And probably not unlike a lot of you, I went through the pandemic and, I wasn't diagnosed with depression, but I'm pretty sure I was going through some form of depression. And anybody who watched what I was doing throughout the entire pandemic probably would never have assumed that I was in a depression. Because I put every single ounce of energy that I had out into the world and everyone saw the best parts of me. I never really talked a lot about what was going on inside of me or that I was feeling that way. And as a result, I was certainly drinking more alcohol. I certainly was more often consuming. And of course, my food habits got completely out of control. It's like it started out with some Zoom calls and we were like chatting with friends and it was like a wine night and then wine nights turned into like every night and, snacks were late and like there was no rhyme or reason to life at that time. It was bizarre and not a whole lot to hold on to. And I really leaned on having a few more drinks in my week and eating snacks and foods that my body didn't really love. And as a result of that, it developed some bad habits. And I've just been working on some of those bad habits over the course of the last little bit. But I had this recent sort of minor health scare. Don't worry, it's not a huge thing. And again, I'll get into this in another episode because I'm saying a lot in this one. But I realized through that bit of a health scare that I needed to really take better care of me. And that also pulled into the love piece, right? More self-love for me. And that means, it's not punishing myself to take better care of me. It's not punishing myself to go to bed earlier and get better sleep. It's not punishing myself to not snack and have my belly full before I go to bed and it doesn't know what to do with it. It's not punishing me to move my body in a way that helps me get stronger and feel better. So those are a lot of the things that I am focused on making some shifts to so that I can show up for more love for myself, right? And then the third word that really came through for me was trust. And trust is really about self-trust and trusting the journey of what's to come. And a lot of what I've been sharing with you in this space has been about, when I started this podcast, it was a feel. My body told me, everything in my heart told me to start this podcast. And, some may think, oh, that's so cheesy or, wow, that's so lame to follow your heart like that. Like, what are you even talking about? And I'm talking about the fact that I'm leaning into that. I'm leaning into what my body wants. I'm leaning into what my heart wants. I'm leaning into what my desires are, what my belly is feeling and what my belly wants to do. And this podcast was one of those first things. And I had to trust that it was the place to start for me. And as I was learning how to do the podcast, and I was talking to different people who do podcasts, and, many of them had opinions on the fact that I shouldn't have been starting a podcast when I did, that I didn't have a business to loop it back to. And how was I going to make money off of my podcast if I didn't have that? And that I was kind of working things backwards. I wasn't supposed to do them in this order. And because I trusted myself and I was practicing, learning how to trust myself more, I thought, no. You know what? That's fine that that's your opinion. That's fine that you want to follow the trajectory that's been set for you or what the path should be. But I'm not interested in doing what I should do. I'm interested in doing what I want to do, what feels right for me to do. And what felt right for me to do was to start talking. Right? So I did. And I had to trust the journey, and it's been incredible. Look at all the amazing people that have been on the podcast, all the incredible conversations and moments that we have shared together here in this space. And I show up vulnerably. I show up like I want others to show up here when they come, as nerve-wracking as it can be, as scary as it can be to share a piece of you. It's like, you know what, when we're not being honest and we're not saying how it is and we're not talking out loud and we're not sharing our stories, we're holding back. And in a way, we're kind of like, it's like holding in a lie a little bit. Like we're afraid, we're living in this fear, afraid to share who we really are. And I really want to help shift that. And so trust for me has come in really heavily because I'm just trusting the process. I trusted that the podcast was right for me to start. I trusted that starting this Joy Project community was the right place for me to start. I trusted that I wanted to lean into more of using my voice and putting my name out there to be on stages and places, right? I trusted that, that all the things are going to come into place when they're ready and when they're meant to. And that's so far what's happening. Is it happening at the speed that I want? Not really. But I've learned that like pushing the limits and just expecting things to happen by the day that I expect or like the deadline that I set is a really masculine way to approach building a life. And it's a way a lot of us have learned to do it, but it's a way that I'm no longer interested in doing it because it doesn't feel good. It's bad for my central nervous system because it keeps me like in the height of must do all the time. But also it feels better to just follow this flow of what comes through me, what is coming naturally to me and what I feel I want to do. So trust in the process is something I've been practicing now for some time. And it came through as a really strong word for me. And so, of course, as I was mentioning some time ago, before I got on a tangent about these 3 intentions of mine this year, we created these vision boards to be a constant reminder of the intentions that we had for ourselves. And it was a really beautiful experience for us to come through this together and for us to set these intentions. And like I said, one of my intentions was connection. So I've created those experiences, those mindful meetups for us to come together once a month and connect. So like I said, I'm really not here to, it's not designed to like pitch you on that concept, but I really just want to encourage you to come out and get connected. Does it cost you a bit? Sure. But it's worth connecting with people that are valuable people that want and are interested in personal growth as much as you are interested in personal growth. And does it mean that you have to come by yourself? Probably. You may not have a person you have in your life that would be willing to go to something like that. But I can tell you the first few tickets that sold, they're all people coming by themselves. They're all people that are putting on their brave hats and they're building their confidence, and that's a practice. So they're coming to an event and bought a ticket to come in alone because that's part of the practice. And I encourage you to do the same thing. But listen, I wasn't actually even intending to come in here and just keep telling you all about that. Although I think it's timely. I think that we need connection. I think that we are a species that require that connection. We require, we feed off of the energy of other people. And when that feed of energy is bad energy, it makes us feel worse. And we want to move away from that, right? We want to recede out of that. But when the energy is good and we can come into a place where we can, trust and have less judgment and no comparison and feel good about us, like that is a place where we want to be. We want to be in connection with people that help us feel good, that show us what's possible. And that's what those experiences are going to be. But a big reason I wanted to come in here and talk today is because I haven't done it in a few weeks now, more than a few weeks. And I've been feeling this tug to sort of get back to it. And I've just been kind of waiting for my body to share with me, like, what are the next steps in this space? Because I have been doing a weekly podcast since the middle of February in 2023. And some of you have been listening to me for some time now. You probably know that I am self-produced. And as I am in the middle of recreating my life and recreating myself, I don't have a team that helps me with the podcast. It is a solo job. So a big part of it is that it's been taking a lot of my time. The average podcast episode for me to go from, recording to editing to getting it, on the podcast site and to sharing it and all those components, the average episode takes between 4 and 5 hours to complete. And so that's a fair amount of time when you're putting out an episode every week. So a big part of my heart has been calling at me to reduce the number of times that I post podcast episodes in a month. And I'm just going to pull back a little bit. So instead of posting every week, I'm going to be posting every other week. And that way I can still show up more fully for you. I can show up in a way that isn't feeling like rushed or pushed, that I can show up in my vulnerability and my honesty with you and really connect with you in a better way than I feel like, I was feeling near the end of the year, where it was like I knew that I had to get an episode out. So I was, talking and then putting an episode out, and not that it was bad things, not that it was bad content, but it wasn't feeling like I really wanted it to feel. This is a therapeutic space for me. And as much as I hope it's a bit of a space like that for you, it's a healing space. It's a space that reminds us that we're not alone. And I want to be able to fully give that to you here in this space without feeling the pressure to get on an episode every week when I have a lot of other things going on that I'm creating and building. And this is one component of it, right? So just so you know that that's happening. So you'll start seeing episodes every other week. And the second thing is that I will still be bringing in guests who want to share their stories. And so I encourage you, if you're somebody who's listening to this and you have a bit of a story to share, maybe you haven't really been talking about your story to anybody, or maybe it's something that's happened in your history that you realize now has propelled you to where you are today. It's like we go through these things in our lives, and oftentimes we don't even understand why they're happening. We often ask ourselves, like, why me and why now and why is this happening to me? And then sometime later, we recognize that if it actually wasn't for that thing pushing us to another direction, that we probably never would have shifted. And now we can't imagine ourselves being in a different place and being in that same place that we used to be, that we got pushed out of. And so often there is a story to tell, right? And so if you're one of those people who has a bit of a story to tell, and you're moving toward and living your dream, you're moving toward just shifting your life and doing things that are better for you, that shift your energy, that allow you to be more of who you are, I really encourage you to reach out to me and fill out an application to come and chat with me. I would love that. And I think the last thing is that I will be doing more really deep, vulnerable sharing with you about some of my story, because it's come to me recently that as I mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, that there are a few things in my history that I haven't really talked about a lot. And I think partly I needed to get practice at sharing my voice, and I needed to get practice at showing up in a vulnerable way like I have been, and sharing my full heart in this space. And I think that a lot of what I have experienced took a lot of healing, and I continue to heal from. But it's part of my journey. And I know that there are a lot of people out there that probably will resonate with what kind of experience I have come through. And I think that it's relatable. It's not like here's Christine, here's the Christine show. It's more about, hey, listen, these are parts of my story, and I know that they were impactful for my life. And I'll bet you that if you're experiencing something similar, that you're feeling some of these things. And I want you to see that there's hope for you. I want you to see that you have the change capacity, that you can shift gears anytime you want. You can change the rules in your life. You can change how it's going to look. You can shift your story. You can do whatever it is that you want. The very first thing you have to do is you have to believe in yourself. You will probably be shocked to know how many times I have picked myself up again, not knowing what the outcome is going to be, and having to trust that I have the right answers inside of me. Some of these things are going to be really hard to share. But I know it's the next step for me. So as you'll hear, I'm crying because it's real. Our pains are real. Our pains are a part of us. They create who we are. And when we distract ourselves constantly from feeling the things that we feel, we push those stories in us down further and further and further, and we get farther and farther away from who we are. And when we start to release the things that have caused us pain, and we start to heal those parts of us, really beautiful things happen. I am a testament to that. I am experiencing really amazing things in my life, even though some of the things are maybe not how I would have saw them. They're not happening, like I said, at the speed that I wish that they would happen. But the joy that I find in my life and the joy that I find inside in comparison to the experiences I've had is really huge. And I give all the credit to working on me, learning to love me, learning to show up for me, and now showing up for you. So I really didn't think I was going to cry today, but whatever, it happens here. It's part of the deal. It's part of the deal. Listen, I'm really excited about this year. And, I hope that this is something that if this episode sat with you, if it resonated with you, share it. Share it with people in your socials, share it with a friend, send it via a text message to somebody, because I know that we're not alone out there. I'm not the only one that feels the things that I feel. I'm not the only one that's been feeling like in my life trapped from all the emotions that I hold inside and feeling shame and guilt for wanting to get them out. And now realizing through my growth that was conditioning. We were taught that. We were taught to throw it under the rug. What was the phrase in your house, right? It's like toss it under the rug. And it wasn't our parents' fault. Their parents did it too, right? Like vulnerability and sharing and feeling our feelings. It was never priority. It was like, get it done. We need to survive, right? And now the world has changed and we have changed and it's time to heal. And so as a result of that, I'm going to be sharing these stories. And I got to say, a big part of me is a little nervous about it. But at the same time, I think there's a real great value in, I always talk about, we don't want to go backwards unless we're looking back to realize how far we've come. And for me, a lot of looking back at these stories, it shows me how far I have come from that time in my life, from feeling like I wasn't worthy, from feeling like I didn't have anything to offer, from accepting the love that I got instead of the love that I wanted. All of those things I realize is because I didn't show up for me. I didn't know how. I didn't know how to show up for me. And so I'm pretty sure that this is all part of the design of my life, right? It's like I had to experience a lot of what I've experienced so I could turn around and help others through their experience. And that's what I do in my coaching, right? That's what I do as an authenticity coach is I help women to rediscover themselves and to stop apologizing and to show up unapologetically and be who they are and go after what they want and start saying it out loud and using their voice and building that confidence and that courage muscle. And it feels really fucking good to do that work, I'll tell you. So, anyways, I want to thank you for showing up for me here today in this episode and listening. I hope that you'll come back. I hope that you'll, mark this episode in whatever it is that you're listening. If you're on your phone and you have podcasts that come into your phone in a certain app, I hope that you'll follow follow this Say It Out Loud podcast so that you'll get notified when more episodes come. And like I mentioned, please share them with people because that's not for me necessarily. That's for you and that's for them, right? It's like the more we share this message of self-love, more we share the stories of our lives and the story of not only survival, but thriving on the other side. I think it's really important. I think people need hope. I think you need hope. I think I need more hope. I think we all need a little more hope, and we need to see it in real people, in real lives, in real action, and it's happening. And I am showing up in that way for you this year. So thank you. Welcome to this new year. Welcome to 2024. I'm sorry I bailed on you, but I'm not at the same time because I needed that time for me. And it feels good to be able to continue and move forward and give you an episode twice a month or every other week instead of doing it every week and feeling the stress of it. Because I really wanted this to be something that just really felt good for me. And it was starting to not feel so good. And anyways, this feels great, even just saying this to you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up today. and share this message. I can't wait to see you next time. Go check out the show notes for all the details and the things I talked about. And if you want to join and you're in the Waterloo region, you want to come out and join us, we're doing it February 7th. I can't wait to see you. And thank you again. Much love to you. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to this episode. I'd like to invite you to hit the follow button on this podcast so you'll be notified when the next one drops. And if you liked this episode, please leave a review, as it will help others to find this message. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at It's Me, Christine D. Or if you'd like to connect about being a guest on the show, ask me about group or one-on-one joy and mindset coaching, learn more about the Joy Project community, or consider hiring me for your next speaking engagement, please visit itsmechristined.ca. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.